Up right then. We are all fixed here at the tavern, this cozy inn by the road, where folks can kick back and exchange tales as we share a pint. I reckon it's high time we made a few introductions. What'll be your tale to tell this evening? Something about that there land grub up in Kansas or Missouri, perchance. Or how about them railroad men bustin' through the woods at an alarming pace, blowin' the tops of them mighty trees flat as pancakes? The whole shebang's cometh upon us faster than we can rightly reckon. And by the way, did you happen to notice that strange look on young Mr. Dickens' face over there? Something ain't right about him, I wager. He's conjuring some new fantastical notions up in them thick coals of his. Now let's settle ourselves into this talky atmosphere and get down to brass tacks. I reckon I got lost in me own thoughts for a sec there, friend. Yeah, sure thing about Mr. Dickens, that fellow's got an air about him like he's sippin' on something other than ale. Got him all scribbled up with them books of his and what not. He seems harmless enough, but I do catch a glimpse of him lookin' mighty intently at the fire, maybe trying to get inspiration for his next novel. As for me tale, well, how about this? You'll ever hear the one 'bout Tom Jeffords, that mountain man fella who's been up in these parts? He was always gettin' mixed up with them outlaws and bandits, what with the Comanches on his tail. Had a beard as long as your leg, and could lasso a steer in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Last time I heard, he got caught by some rangers near Wichita River, but not before he took off with a tribe's fiddle, claimin' it'd be just another part of his tail. Say, out them newfangled trains they're talking about. Can't help but feel like we'll be seeing the day when these city folks can have all sorts of gadgets and gizmos at their fingertips. Maybe even in this very inn. Who knows? Stranger things and a 3-legged stool. So, how about you, what brings a fella into our here town? Any secrets from them hills or tales to trade from the countryside? Just keep it straight. I'm all ears and ale. The blacksmith laughs heartily. Tom Jeffords, that wild mountain man. Yet heard him wandering through these parts from time to time with that fiddle o' his'n. 'Tis said he played it at Comanche gatherings to ease the pain of those harsh frontier years. As for tales of me own, well, I reckon you're wanting something to perk up your spirits tonight. Hammers beatin', sparks flyin', they call it a smith's dance. Some say that I reckon there was a special kind o' firework show occur when the new telegraph lines were being stretched through town. Now, he's talking about how these lines of wires will crisscross the land from shore to shore faster than horses running free. And there I am, thinkin', this here is either the maddest invention ever or a new kind o' trick on these good folk. The smith slaps his meaty palm against the bar, laughing so heartily that he almost spills ale. Come on, ain't none o' your secrets too spicy for old Dan to handle, just between us. Tom Jeffords chuckles low in his throat, shaking his head at the blacksmith's tale. Lord have mercy, Dan, you've got a one-track mind, don't ya? He takes a swig of ale, grinning. A telegraph line running from shore to shore. I'll believe it when I see it, but I reckon progress is what the folks in Washington think it is. He eyes the blacksmith with amusement, Speaking o' which, how's business been here at your forge? I've got my own story. Dan been thinking about making some silverware with that fancy steam-powered press you just got for the foundry. Think it's going to change the way things are done around here. But, as always, I'll need your expert opinion on what might go wrong. The bar falls silent for a second as both men take a sip of ale and let it warm their voices, getting into some easy laughter as the tension broke. They'd done it a dozen times before, just enjoying each other's company after another long day of toil on that arduous frontier life. Now where were they this time? As you sit in Dan's forge and take your first pull of the hot whiskey he pours for you, slowing down the chatter of ranchers at the next table, with a sly wink the sounds from the road start up, and a young couple approaches. With an introduction by Dan to these city-born folk visiting frontier lands for the health of the air in what we'll now call New Mexico, even if you folks didn't have that map of the stars painted upon your minds yet, Tom Jeffords steps over with interest in them. It was always like this, people coming through seeking to be a part of their land. These two are strangers and travelers by nature. It shows within those eager eyes that meet yours as they tell tales. She speaks fluent Spanish to Dan, you remember, when there were missionaries, while her fellow German brogue stands out like your neighbor from way back across the creek, with his newfangled notions of freedom in a land full enough already. What more will be left once we are done plucking and picking at the bones of this vast place? You think on how things change. The land stays here while all others, Indians, settlers, politicians, even horses, they'll come, do what they can with what's been here. Some settle in and make homes out of dirt floors to marble steps, but it'll be us who hold onto it through their dreams and tales. We are like those stones Dan melts in the furnace before reforging them again. Sir or ma'am, is there room by you? Says one to another as they sit next to the table with some laughter exchanged about a funny kopoke. Oh yes, they smile. This sounds good for us now, the other confirms with eyes wide from what the whiskey's got flowing like a freshwater spring in your chest. No, wait. You're at Dan's forge. I nod to Dan and give a wry smile as the young couple approaches. Why, it seems we've got some city slickers here, fresh off the trail, I say with a chuckle, eyeing them appraisingly. Tom Jeffords, ever the observant one, takes in the Spanish-speaking woman's language and nods thoughtfully. His eyes flit to her companion, and he can already tell that his ears would be perked up for their tale. Welcome, travelers, I say with a friendly smile, pouring them both another shot of Dan's finest whiskey. You're right on time. We've been getting the afternoon sun about as bad as you'll find anywhere these days. And lean in, lowering my voice and nodding to Tom. You know, they came from San Antonio, up here through El Paso. The air was just too rich for their city slicker lungs, if you catch my drift. Some leave as easily as they arrive, but we, who have spent more than our share of time under these same stars, stay behind to write the next chapter in the ever-shifting book of this place. Dan's eyes twinkle in response, watching the young travelers take a seat, their laughter filling the room with an infectious warmth that speaks to their shared sense of adventure. The flames crackle and dance on his forge as I keep the conversation flowing, listening for more stories about their sojourn across our dusty terrain. One day, it'll be us sharing tales about theirs. I am delighted to see you enjoying yourself, the woman said. What is your favorite part of your journey here? She smiled kindly at you, her accent lilting with that foreign lilt. You bet, the man responded with enthusiasm. He clapped his hand on the table loudly. His companion winced as she flinched in surprise. He chuckled and reached over to place a comforting hand on hers, apologizing for the loud outburst. But, yeah, that night's fights, nothing compared back east. They both raised their glasses together. You felt yourself getting swept up in the warmth of their energy and eagerness. The conversation seemed lighter than air after being round as heavy as it could get with such topics. But Tom had a question of his own. Kael, you folks ever been into politics or any bigwigs in town? This territory's still feeling the Mexican War pulse. The woman, whose accent seemed to dance across her words, laughed a gentle, throaty sound as she took a sip of her ale. Her eyes sparkled with amusement as she gazed at Tom. Ah, politics. Well, let us just say I have mine. I've heard rumors that there's some unofficial activity going on between certain parties. It's as if some individuals would like to see this territory remain a part of the states at all costs. I don't know about you, Tom, but I'm sure you've noticed the tensions between those who support expansion into our lands and those who are keen to protect what we have here. You couldn't quite put your finger on it, but something about the atmosphere felt heavy with potential, like the weight of a gathering storm, ready to break. Just as she finished speaking, a figure appeared at the bar's entrance, clad in the garb of an older gentleman. His presence was imposing, and his gaze swept across the room before locking onto Tom's. For a fleeting moment, their eyes seemed to hold a challenge or perhaps something more complicated. Who might that be? The woman asked, her voice tinged with curiosity as she motioned toward the newcomer with her chin. Tom's gaze followed hers, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly at the sight of the approaching figure. It's no other than General Zachary Taylor himself, he exclaimed, his voice carrying a note of awe tinged with wariness. It's well known round these parts that he's one to be reckoned with, Tom continued. From what I've heard tell, there are those who say he'll never hesitate to fire the first shot in a fight, much less a politician. He cast an approving glance at Taylor before his eyes darted back toward you and the woman. Speak plainly about the matters on your minds, Tom called out across the room. It's not healthy keeping secrets under our hats. If folks around here are going to keep talking politics and rumors, they should get on with it. He took another swig of his drink before motioning to Taylor, who just seated himself at a table nearby. The general met Tom's gaze coolly before returning to reading a document spread out before him. You couldn't shake the feeling that everyone in the tavern was listening closely, hanging on to every word exchanged between them. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably from idle gossip to anticipation of something more, as if they were all straining on tenterhooks, waiting some declaration or pronouncement that could alter everything in a single heartbeat. Tom returned his attention back to you and your companion with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Let's hear it then, he pressed gently, the innuendo evident in his voice. We've all got opinions, might as well share them. He seemed eager for this exchange of political discourse, but also warned, with an unspoken understanding, that such talk could prove hazardous in certain quarters. And so it appeared that Tom's call to action was answered in more ways than one, as he prodded and cajoled the crowd. Tongues listened like a gag remote, and the tavern suddenly resounded with chatter of military movements and political alliances. But beware, for amongst all this merriment there loomed the ever-present undercurrent tension waiting to strike. Who knew when the storm cloud of conflict might burst forth? One had to tread carefully within these politically fraught waters. General Taylor, you said, trying to sound casual as you took a seat next to your companion at the bar. It's an honor to see you again. You nodded in his direction, acknowledging him with a gesture that was both respectful and guarded. As the tavern filled with an expectant energy, the atmosphere became more charged than ever. People's conversations grew louder and more heated, as they eagerly waited for some sort of declaration or announcement from General Taylor. The tension was palpable, and it seemed to reverberate through every corner of the room. Your companion leaned in closer, their voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "What's your take on this business?" they whispered to you. "The talk is going from nothing to full-blown revolution faster than you can say march to Fort Sumter." You sipped your drink, trying not to commit too much to paper in the open air. You and your companion had always been careful about the topics you broached round Taylor's ears, especially in these times when war loomed over every horizon. "Reckon the old general has an agenda, but what it is," you replied softly, "only time or he will tell." General Taylor raised his gaze from the document spread out before him and locked eyes with you for a few moments. There was something unreadable in that look, something that told you your friend to be circumspect about how far one should stray. As the anticipation mounted, another patron called out. He said he'd decide what needed fixin' round these here parts today. The whole tavern came alive with more and more voices offering guesses. You couldn't help but grin. Some things just got people worked up no matter who you were. What next did the crowd want to know about this mysterious, perhaps imminent decision by General Taylor? Did folks see it as the dawn of a great war that would decide which way this fragile new country or America in some should head? Only Taylor seemed privy to these plans. "Shouldn't get so caught up we overlook how the world works outside our little town," another voice chimed in. Would the room erupt in cheers at every sound and opinion like one was a key to success for someone? How about there was danger on all sides, threatening it from even seemingly distant corners? Taylor lifted his gaze and smiled grimly round the tavern. "Enough of this talk. My decision has been made." He took another pull from his cigar, then set it down as he began to address the gathering crowd. "Gentlemen, we gather at a most significant crossroad. We're facing threats abroad and challenges from our own home turf. Now, I am here to offer you a solution for what I believe will unite us in purpose." He stared round at the eager faces, and your hearts thumped heavy in chests. "Are we about to go to war?" your comrade whispered as he nudged your elbow with excitement that mirrored the room's atmosphere. A few shouts of approval rang out, and murmurs of debate grew among others. "We are," Taylor confirmed loudly above the noise. "For my country or no longer." Stand up for the North. Stand by Lincoln, not me. What will you say or do next? You're torn by duty, love of country, and fear that this may not just be a declaration, but a march towards disaster. Do you raise your fist, then leave for home? Or step back to observe what will now unfold? I rose from my stool, my eyes fixed on Taylor's resolute gaze. The air was electric, with anticipation and trepidation as the crowd began to surround me. My mind reeled with conflicting emotions: loyalty to my friends and family in this southbound city, and the weight of duty that seemed to be pulling me towards this northern crusade. As I raised my right hand, I hesitated for a split second before making my decision. The Pledge of Allegiance felt like a dagger twisting deep within my heart. I swallowed hard, trying to rationalize the choice I was about to make. I stand with Lincoln, I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper as I tried to keep it steady. The words caught in my throat as Taylor's piercing gaze seemed to bore into me, assessing whether I was genuine or just going through the motions. My heart pounded faster at the realization that this decision might not only change me, but potentially unravel the fabric of our community. I dropped my hand, and with a newfound sense of purpose, walked out of the tavern, ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead. Taylor's eyes widened with both astonishment and pride as you declared your allegiance to Lincoln. He raised his tankard in a silent toast, downing the ale before slamming it onto the counter. A resounding cheer erupted from within the tavern. The crowd around me seemed to part, making way for me to approach you. Taylor stepped close enough that we almost touched and patted your back. We're with him too, he declared fiercely, a steely resolve burning in his eyes. I've been hammering away at some of those Yankees on the assembly line for years. Think it's about time them Easterners took care of us. He chuckled ruefully. But mark my words, we ain't all like Lincoln. We hate for any trouble to beset an innocent such as yourself. I shot a knowing glance at Taylor, my eyes widening with surprise at his sudden shift from zealous support to caution. Taylor, you're telling me you've got family down in Georgia? I asked, lowering my voice to match his. I kept one hand on the bar, ready for whatever might come next. A low murmur ran through the crowd as they sensed the tension between us. The atmosphere in the tavern grew thick with unspoken warning. Taylor's actions were sending a message: cross me and risk being targeted by those with kin who'd fled to the Confederacy. I didn't like it, but I couldn't deny his words held weight. As the patrons of the tavern continued to cast worried glances between us, I decided it was best to tread carefully. I leaned in closer, speaking in hushed tones. Listen here, Taylor, if these rumors get out or if anyone even comes near talking bad about this president's policies, we'll both be fine. You and me are just simple folk in our part. I ain't no soldier looking to get bloody. As you finished speaking to Taylor, you noticed the bartender glance warily over the crowd with concern etched across his weathered face. The men seated nearby slowly push away from the tables, as if anticipating violence at any second. A tall figure, with broad shoulders and a hard-set jaw, suddenly rises up from his seat next to the fire. "So you're Southeastern. We sit tight when there are soldiers we're in Confederate uniforms making threats over yonder in Indiana." Taylor glares at him sharply from across the room, and suddenly I feel uneasy about what I've stirred up with my friendly words. "You boys talking something we should all hear." Someone else calls out in a drunken slur, grabbing for his pistol beneath the table. Another mutter runs through the crowd. Voices are growing louder, tension rising to boiling point. In an instant, you find yourself thrust into a conflict not of your making, one that could end badly with shots fired and lives lost. You look round at the crowd and see the hate simmering just below the surface and wonder if this night is about to get uglier. "Lie down your tongue there. I think ye got your knickers in a twist," chides a tipsy traveler as he pats the bar, sloshing his drink. "A bit of ruckus is good for us souls. We need to let off some steam from these tense times. Why don't you just pour yourself a tankard and join in? You sure are missing out on all the fun unless you're scared of getting a mouthful of opinions." Another patron chuckles loudly and elbows his friend, nearly tipping over an already wobbly chair. "The old proprietor's got a short fuse, has he? All right then, fine gentlemen. We'll calm ourselves down. For now, please speak as if one of these patrons speaks in first person. John, now, hold on there, Mr. Lanford. I was just about to get to the good part about this confounded new railroad line. See, they're plowing a right old path through my land without so much as an offer or a sorry by your leave. I do not see how this chat will continue, as there is no Lanford character introduced or referenced in the conversation. You can either 1. Create another patron, e.g. Lanford, etc., to introduce them to join in and add some fuel to the pot. Describe who they are, their issues, and let's proceed accordingly. 2. Have one of the existing patrons, John, James, or Seth, talk to you instead, like answering your question request, thus shifting the chat dynamics, moving from conversation to interrogation style dialogue. Which would you like to do? Please note that we are still adhering to historical setting in the USA around 1850. We are also respecting social conventions of language, etiquette and gender roles of the era when speaking and acting out their lives in such an environment. Please type 1 if you'd like Landford added or a combination of any patrons interacting with user, or type 2 for existing characters addressing questions to Assistant Hauser directly. Fine question. So tell me about this steam engine racket that's got you perturbed. These contractions making all them noises seem like a regular pestifrau swarm of cicadas to you.
Yeah, cicadas.
It seems you want to continue with more dialogues. Here's the response. Oh, shucks. It's this blasted new subterranean mine they're borrowing out in the country. Whole bunch of nothing but holes in the ground and folk who swear I can dig into their cellar. Me, I'd rather drink my beer cold than give up a spot of land to a pair of scoundrels trying to make themselves rich by some harebrained scheme. Whoa, easy now, says the old blacksmith, holding up his hands in jest. Subterranean mine, is it? Well, that's mighty risky work they're digging out there in the countryside. Don't know if I could sleep nights with all them explosions going off, shaking the earth under my forge. Sounds like a surefire way to make folks jumpy. He snorts. Them land grabbers needn't fret too much about where they lay their heads. Might as well pour water over their coffers. With a laugh and a slap of his work-hardened palm on the bar top, he continues, but enough of this idle chat. Leaning over to catch your ear close to the bar whispers a conspiratorial, ain't there an easier way to find riches? Why not try wrestling alligators like that crazy guy over in Florida? I raise an eyebrow, taking the blacksmith's bait. Well now, old friend, I say with a chuckle, if you've got some inside track on those mine workers, share 'em. Maybe we can both clean up and keep the tavern from going dry. I turn back to my companions at the table. I must admit, there ain't no shortage of folks looking for ways to strike it rich out here. But them new settlers are as unpredictable as a thunderstorm. You can count on 'em doing more damage than good. The bartender, who's been quiet until now, speaks up with a nod of his head. And that Florida fella, I add, leaning back in my chair, I reckon there ain't no one better at wrestling alligators and mules alike. The bartender snorts in disbelief, nearly choking on his ale as he nods at your tale. The smith's grin grows even broader now, eyes sparkling like polished pewter. Aha, ain't it true though, he says, pounding his hand against the bar for emphasis. Hear this, you can't keep a Florida boy down. See? The tavern patrons erupt into chuckles and shouts of amusement, some taking bets on who among them could come up with an even more outlandish claim than the brewer's bold statement. The atmosphere shifts to one of playful banter and light-hearted rivalry. Just then, a burly coal miner leans in from his seat by the fire, a thick beard dusting his chest. He lets out a mighty roar that could have felled an oxen, and exclaims in all seriousness, "A Florida boy! I reckon they must be talking about some scrawny mangy dog." The patrons groan at his crudeness, but also burst into laughter. Meanwhile, the brewer takes it as an invitation to spin another yarn. He winks at the bucky and grins from ear to ear, taking on a flamboyant tone that sets him apart even more from the common folk round the tavern. "I know, I tell thee." This very man who seems so full of bravado right now was raised by gators in the swamp back in Gainesville. The air is electric with energy and amusement as the bucky shakes his head in exasperation. Lord have mercy.
This has to end sometime, and that sometime is now.